Hmm. Talk a little bit about the ET stuff that maybe you're in touch with. What do you have to say about some of that?
Yeah, that comes out a lot in these talks
Yeah,
with
tell me
God.
because that's a subject I'm very connected to and very involved with. So I'd love to hear what
Yeah, I'd love to
God has
hear
to say.
in a soul reading for you, what that connection is.
Well, you could do that if you want. I
Sure, let's
mean,
do that. Let's do that.
sure. I don't care if people listen.
Okay, good, good. Because you're doing a great service. When people see your soul, then they start to wonder about their own, and that's when big things happen for people.
Okay.
Okay, so God says your soul has a journey that is very important to the ET story.
Hmm.
Your story has to do with how you once were abducted by the striding, abducted by the striding of a being in a construct totally different from this one. Totally
Hmm.
different. The world from which you derive is a world of multidimensionality.
Hmm.
Is it Middle Earth? Yes.
Hmm.
You are a Middle Earth dweller who has come into a human form in order to help individuals become more aware of their multidimensional purpose.
Hmm.
Multidimensional purposes are very individual. There is not some big mass of that. There is individual pockets of the nature of the being that has a multidimensional capability. Very few humans are truly capable of multidimensionality, but they need to arise in its understanding so that the next phase of their ascension takes them into worlds other than the earth.
Well, define multidimensionality as you see it.
Multidimensionality is when an individuated form, whether it is in the form of matter, material, or spirit, soul, or some semblance of the two, has the ability to take what they are and put it in a completely different flight pattern
Hmm.
than one of bipedal condition. So
Hmm.
the flight pattern in the bipedal is that of simply floating as the legs move forward. But the flight pattern in another dimension is a literal flying while the body itself self stays conditioned to rest.
Hmm.
You mean so like they're in comas in a sense, but their essence travels? No. Okay, sorry. My imagination sometimes
No,
goes
that's
wild
okay.
on
No,
these.
that's okay.
Okay,
You can
so
jump.
God says the foundation of this is simply the way of travel. So imagine the individuated condition traveling through ways of time, ways of condition, ways of soaring and subducting.
Hmm.
It's in the subduction that another dimension is obtained in a human consciousness.
Subduction. That means ETs taking over human bodies in a sense. Is that what subduction
Ooh,
means?
interesting. That's not how I saw it. So
Or how do you see
God
it?
says, no, it's not subduction in a subduing. It is
Uh-huh.
subduction in a subsurface
Hmm.
form of existence.
Subsurface. You mean subsurface, awareness, subconscious? Is that what you're saying when you say subsurface?
So God says the nature of Middle Earth is a gravitational null
Mm-hmm.
because it's in the center of a great sphere. The null allows for a void which allows for a molecular space divide, which allows for a passing through that which is considered dense.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the multi-dimensionality of a form, but it appears to be three-dimensional when it is within, but it is literally another dimension in order to pass through that which is matter.
You know, I think the movie Interstellar touches upon that. Have you seen Interstellar?
I haven't. Let me write that down.
You should see that. It's a new movie that's out. It talks a little bit about this aspect of multidimensionality. I don't know if they understand it in that way, but so the ET mind or consciousness also exists in a multidimensional realm, right? Where they're
Yes.
And the Middle Earth consciousness is also that as well.
Yes.
So my purpose here is to bring that awareness to people here
of those. Middle Earth.
And what does that mean? Yes, there's a civilization inside the earth, but what is the awareness of that people need to hear?
The purpose of keeping the earth a resourceful nature rather than a destruction of the resources. Because when an individual loses their sense of higher purpose, then there's a cascading effect that occurs within all of mankind. So the more people who have no purpose, the more of mankind that works without purpose. And when mankind works without purpose, mankind loses a sense of its grip in a resource earth. And as man loses man's grip on the resource earth, then Middle Earth loses some of its greatest resource for reproduction.
But this is what the Australian Aborigines have been trying to hold on to as well. You know, the source of non-consumerism. They're not even agriculturalists, the Aborigines, because they don't want to manipulate the earth. So they're completely hunters and gatherers living off their connection with the environment and the earth itself without trying to manipulate it for commodities.
Yeah.
For acquisition. They're there as receivers of the earth and caretakers of the earth. So they felt that even agriculture was a form of, consumerism.
Yes.
And so they've maintained a pure presence with the earth itself. What does God have to say about that?
This is Sondra saying, I just saw a picture of, their a dying, when the earth no longer sustains resources, then you can't live off the earth, right? Okay, so, but God says, the Aborigine is not the state of mankind that we are endorsing, although it is a reminder of the ways of man in the wild, and we don't want it to disappear by any means, because this reminder is very important to the future of humankind. But we taught man how to till the ground. We taught man how to make what is in the ground flourish into what feeds the earth. But what needs to happen now is man needs to discover the oceans in the deserts, to discover the ways of building crops that are contained within buildings to create a hydroponic form of feeding mankind. Stop grabbing the earth as being the only source of giving.
And why do we need to ever increasing populations for that? What's the reason for that?
Intelligence.
What do you mean?
As mankind develops in numbers and then finds ways to adapt and survive, in addition to keeping the earth's resources pumping the giving way, constantly pumping the giving way. What happens is the identity changes from a position of me to we.
Mm-hmm.
But that we cannot be the Marxist picture of full distribution of wealth. There has to be incentive, but all incentive needs to come from a place of productivity, not a place of money.
Well, productivity leads to money, though. I mean, the reason productivity is prized is because it gets people money. But of course, if we have a different orientation where productivity is abundance for all and compassion and love for all, then consumerism is replaced with empathy and connection.
Consumerism is ultimately striving for one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and
What's
that is wealth.
Right. So what do we replace that with?
What is replaced in intelligence, and it is just a natural evolution of intelligence, there's nothing anyone need do. It will evolve to this form of conditioning the mind to believe it's all a collective. Mm-hmm. And in that collective, health has to come from productivity.
Mm-hmm. And it is a collective and so we're waking up to that fact. And that's why I'm saying
I'm seeing Star Trek as being the model. I think Roddenberry really was given very important information, and this is obviously Sondra talking. I'm also have been shown that the Galactic Federation really does exist. Mm-hmm. I am personally a member of the Galactic Federation. Apparently, I don't have any glimpses of.
You don't have a card that shows you?
No. No, and that only came through in a reading with another person who is a member of the Galactic.
Well, when you have a galactic awareness, you're part of a galactic federation. It's having the awareness. That's all it is.
Right.
I mean, if you don't have the awareness, you're obviously not part of it. But if you do have the awareness that there's intelligence throughout the galaxy, throughout the universe, then it's like you're not just living where are you in Houston or something. You're living in Texas. You're living in the U.S. It just increases the awareness of the environment. So we're all part of that federation. You know,
the boundaries become removed, and what happens is the Earth appears to be what it truly is, which is a vessel to hold beings as they travel through space.
And it's a very beautiful place as well, the Earth. But are there other places as beautiful as this?
And more beautiful.
And more beautiful, really?
Yes.
Like which place? Which place?
There is a solar system just off to the right. If you're facing the sun today, with what time frame? Just facing the sun is a daylight, so you've got an entire region of the sky. So in that entire region of the sky during daylight in the northern hemisphere, to the right is a solar system that has developed an Earth-like planet that has come full circle. So the beings that walk that Earth are self-aware, self-conscious, and self-centered.
How far is that solar system from ours?
It is within a day in our priority.
A day, one light day, one light.
God says Sondra doesn't have the language to describe this.
Okay, that's okay. But it is probably what you're meaning, a light, instead of a light year, a light day. And so are those beings human looking there, or they look different?
There are humanoids. There are
like us?
Yes. There are also creatures that have human intelligence, but are four-legged.
Like dolphins would be of human intelligence, but they swim in the ocean.
Right.
What else were you going to say?
Well, I just saw, this is Sondra saying, I just saw, something similar to the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Is that what you mean, God? Yes. Yes.
Which hieroglyphics?
So I'm picturing the dog with the nose. Which one is that?
Oh,
Osiris?
Anubis.
Anubis?
Anubis.
Anubis.
Yeah.
So I'm picturing that being an actual being.
Yeah, I think the Egyptians probably were aware of those different star systems and those different alien, if we want to call them, beings. But they, sentience and compassion is a universal trait in the evolution of consciousness. So they may look alien, but the connection to us is one of compassion, sentience, awareness.
We wish that was true, but there are compassionate beings who use that kindness in order to get from humanity what it needs from humanity.
Well, it happens every day. Just go to a used car salesman and you'll see that. I do have another question about the ET stuff. Are we going to have a public disclosure of contact? Will that be, I mean, it's happening, but will it become public?
Yes. And that's what chapter 4 is about in my book. So God says the disclosure is for the consistency of humans. So in other words, if they didn't disclose their existence, then humans would never get a sense collectively of the impact that they have on the earth. So the exposure of the existence of these beings is merely to save humans from destroying themselves, because if they destroy themselves, then these particular aliens have no one to help them reproduce.
Right. So when will this disclosure take place?
It'll occur over the next 2 generations.
2 generations means what? 30, 40 years?
It's not something that they are going to have a press conference about, and then ETs show up and they talk to the ETs on a physical plane. It's that more and more humans are going to be aware of the contact through telepathy or through some other form of contact. And this is Sondra saying, I just got this feeling of abduction. So, and it's in the spreading of the word that way that the disclosure is going to occur. Otherwise, humans wouldn't survive the fear of it.
Well, the fear is what is so much a part of the abduction. I mean, how can I remember my abduction?
You won't ever remember your abduction because it occurred in a transcendental state.
But I could access that, right?
Yes.
What do I need to do to access that state?
You put your mind at ease first, because the reason that you can't access it yet is because your mind remembers the terror. And so if you can release the terror in your mind, which is very difficult to do, then you can start to access the memory of it in your cells. It's not memory that comes from the brain, because for you, this is all conditioned in the cells within your body. So you'll have instant knowing, in other words.
Right, I get that. And then I'm writing about that. Will this, I feel this book will help people understand that relationship that's happening and prepare people for that. I mean, it's only abduction because of the terror, because their reality is so foreign from what we know to be true. That's the real trauma of it. It's not what is actually happening, because there's an agreement on some level of what's happening. It's just that realities are clashing, you know? And when realities clash, the human retreats further into its own. Yeah, I mean, just normal trauma does that. Forget just encountering a being that doesn't look or think or feel anything like what we're used to.
Right.
But we're going to have to get used to that in the next 2 generations, right?
Yeah.
And so what will happen then, you feel, or what are you getting?
God says the way that it will occur is like a crescendo effect. So the building of the experiences on the collective consciousness will ultimately create a condition of, look, you need to do something about these experiences humans are having, and you have to show us what's going on. So governments have to then align to the sovereign nature of it, which is a unity of mind of it.
Well, that will also bring the earth together, of course, right? It'll also bring the...
against a common enemy.
Yeah, but it's not really an enemy, though.
It will be.
It will be? Why do you say that?
Because the enemy within doesn't allow the enemy without to be something that you cannot identify.
But that will change, though. I mean, that awareness. In 2 generations, will it change?
What will change is people's understanding of the universe. Just as they discovered that they weren't the center of the universe, they will also now discover that they are not the only living force in the universe with intelligence.
Right.
So that is the shift that occurs, is sudden awareness. But that creates and generates a great deal of fear in the majority of the human minds.
Right, but not for everyone who is preparing the way of possibilities. So that's what I am hoping to do, is prepare people for that shock in a way, that, hey, we're not alone, because you have to make a lot of psychic room to include other beings in your reality.
Yeah,
you know?
Big imagination.
So why do you talk about that so much? How is that part of people's spiritual soul evolution? I'm just curious, as a God-scribe.
Good question. So this is God talking now. The way that we like to give people what they're looking for is to start to show the connections between what is the nature of their being and what is the experience of their human. So the nature of their being is something greater than the human, as we've described, but it is also greater than what the human is being. So the human is capable of higher states of being in its understanding of itself. So it has to know that it is not the source of its totality. The human being. And the best way to demonstrate that is to show something greater than the human understanding, which is the whole ET construct, greater than the human understanding.
Well, it's not just an example or a metaphor. It's an actuality. It's a reality as well.
Yes.
I mean, so it's...
And that's what makes the shift. If it were just a metaphor or a symbol, only some people would make the shift. But
so the whole
planet makes the shift at the point of disclosure coming to a crescendo.
But you say that will create a common enemy.
Yeah.
So but it's not an enemy if it's a galactic federation.
But these are not, the ones that pluck the humans from their homes are not members of the Federation.
But they are seeking life and their own evolution. You know, they're not necessarily bad. I mean, they may not have great bedside manners, but they are seeking a co-creation, though.
You know what I'm seeing, this is Sondra saying, what I'm seeing, it's likening to, North Korea. So these are beings that feel entitled to govern a policy or against a policy that is a galactic decision, to do no harm and always work in transparency.
Right.
But
I think we're looking at the total human being that's unconscious. I don't think they are negative in a sense, and I don't think they're necessarily doing harm. They're looking for evolution. They're looking for something good, which is a hybridization of the humans and the greys to help uplift their race, to be more compassionate, to feel.
That is a higher way of thinking about it, but it is not the way that the humans will think about it once they see what's really happening. No. How would you like your own daughter brought up into a ship and then impregnated and then put back into her home with this traumatic memory of something happening but not knowing exactly what it is, and then being brought back into the ship and this incubated baby taken from her, and then the memory of the trauma?
It's awful. It's an awful traumatic experience.
So it is something that is bad.
Well, if we call it bad or good, but we have to see also what's the higher purposes here for that action.
And that's good for healing, but it is
not about healing. But I'm saying there is a higher purpose. There's trauma, but what is the higher purpose? What is the reason? It's not to traumatize.
It's to help another species repopulate.
But based on our feeling.
That's the highest purpose of it.
No, but I think you're missing one point, is that what we have that they don't have is our capacity to feel, to have creativity, to, compassion, love. This is what they're needing from us as human beings.
No, that's not true.
Well, I don't think they have that capacity. I think that's what they're wanting from us. That's what I think.
What they want from humans is physical body to incubate young.
And what? But the emotional aspects come along with that cellular memories.
No more or less than a scientist that utilizes an animal for their own purpose.
Well, I don't know. I got other information that was more to create this hybridization, which was incredibly creative and intelligent.
I think this is Sondra saying. I think that's a different condition of the of the so-called aliens. That what you're talking about feels to me like a cooperative with the humans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're saying there's other races that are just coming in and wanting genetics.
Yep.
And that's when the government knows that, and that's why they haven't come forward to acknowledge that. And when that does come forward, then the governments of the world will unite in a common enemy.
Right.
And ignore the compassionate extraterrestrials that are also there.
Well, they also unite with the humans to. It's not going to be a battle. Humans are smart enough not to pick a fight with something that could annihilate them, but the enemy part of it becomes a fear intensity that can enslave an entire population. Just as Egyptians were able to enslave a large population.
Well, in a way, we are already enslaved by fear. So I'm not saying...
In a lot of ways, yes.
I'd say most people are enslaved by that. That's the only reason they're doing the job they're doing, or, putting up with the life that they're living. That's why, revolutions are erupting in the Middle East, in places that no longer want to live under those conditions.
Right.
So I think this awakening of this totality is happening. But why aren't these ETs, these bad ETs, being stopped by the Galactic Federation?
It would be like the United States invading North Korea to change North Korea's ways.
Well, United States has done that to other countries. I mean, we invaded Iraq just to depose the leader. I mean, it happens all the time, you know?
But there has to be some kind of enforcing reason. So the Middle East, the enforcing reason has to do with the fear of loss of oil resources. No governing body should be allowed to govern the world's resources.
Except the United States, of course.
But that the United States is a free country.
Well, you know,
there's no totalitarian regime.
The
yes,
totalitarian regimes are the corporations that really run the governments, that control the monopoly of the world oil. So,
but there is a way, because this is a free country, there is a way to not have to work within the system. But when you're in a totalitarian regime, you don't have that choice.
Well, you know, we could invade North Korea because they are treating their people like animals, just the way countries invaded Nazi Germany because there was a war against humanity going on there. So were we to stand back and say, oh, it's your country, Germany, you can do and annihilate population? So I'm saying if the Galactic Federation is seeing this, like the way the countries of the world saw Nazi Germany acting, wouldn't you think they would go in and stop it?
There's only one way to stop that which is covert, and that is to reveal it. And once it is revealed, it will end on its own course. So there isn't a reason for the Galactic Federation to create this huge war in the skies.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying revealing it here on Earth, bringing awareness to this, will stop these negative abductions?
It will stop the covert operation of it.
But,
and then humans can decide if they want to cooperate with this or not. They don't have a choice right now. Mm-hmm. That's what's against the Galactic Federation. No choice.
That's what do you mean against the Galactic Federation?
The Galactic Federation is an interstellar condition of forward momentum for intelligence. So it is a body of intelligence that aligns to all evolutions of intelligence. Mm-hmm. So there are representatives, in other words, from every intelligent population. Mm-hmm. And their only job is to survey, observe, and to unite when the full disclosures are in agreement.
Mm-hmm. How many different planets are there in the Federation, or star systems, or solar systems? How many?
There are... Okay, so here's a spirit word coming out. So the spirit word is, there are Sauriancantation. So the Sauriancantation is that a being? Saurian? No.
No, it's a grouping, I think.
Yeah? Really? Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. I love it that you can understand spirit words. Okay, so for forward momentums mean that there are numbers that shift. Mm-hmm. So people have a tour of duty, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think it also is dependent on different time flows and time lags, right, and timelines and dimensionalities, right, and all those aspects that are fluid outside this realm here.
Very good, yeah.
So,
wow, that was really cool. I've never experienced that with somebody before, where God set a collection of word forms in order to create something we don't have a word for, and then you just described what that word meant. That was cool. Very cool.
Yeah, no, that's fun to play like that because as we tune into the same wavelength, we can start to speak the same language. And so thank you. Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
So, what was I saying? So, yeah, talk about these and then we'll wrap up this interdimensional quality of being. You know, how, there's the 3D and there's these other slightly variant, dimensionalities that exist alongside of us, parallel universes and ultra-dimensional beings that interface in and out. Can you, have God talk about those levels of beingness and how they overlap with our being and intersect and expand upon us?
So this could be a book in itself, but what we will enjoy to give you is that there are systems within the human realm that are already developed in multidimensionality. So these require the physics of operation to be full source derived. Okay, so what I'm picturing is somebody like Einstein, who obviously drew from source in order to write out his physics equations. Is that right, God? Yes. So the source derived physics equations is a new science that allows for the adoption of artificial intelligence in the way of man's thinking about man's self. As man derives an understanding that he is artificial intelligence for God or source or some greater theory of everything, then the dimensions that keep humans understanding this is what gets revealed in the science fiction. Science fiction becomes the expression of an understanding for man's next phase of technology. As man technologically advances from source-derived information, then the dimensional shift that occurs is a paradigm of understanding, and it's an instant raising of understanding. So, for instance, the germ theory, one might say that that is a dimension in and of itself, the nature of germs and how they can be carried and travel and affect.
It's true. It's true. Just like baseball is. I'm taking another extreme.
Right.
But yeah, it's another dimension where things just mean something within that sphere of meaning.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so you're saying about these inner state beings or these interdimensional beings, what about them though?
That what humans are going to be able to do is observe them on a level that raises their own condition for dimensionality. So
Okay.
even though it is a three-dimensional experience in the sensual nature, the mind from which all derives is from the great mind. The imagination can draw the individual into an understanding of another dimension, which therefore moves them in that dimension. They just can't prove it.
Well, but it will open up to them if they trust,
Yes.
like you did, Sondra.
Yes.
There was a point where you trusted what was happening to you over the outside world, but that would say you're crazy.
Right.
So, yeah, that's sort of where I wanted to go earlier. It's like, what was that point that you realized this was a reality and not your own creation, and it shifted you from being an atheist to whatever you call yourself now. But what was that moment where you said, this is real for me?
It was immediate, but this is something I can talk about. Took years.
Yeah. But was there I mean,
There was a layer of madness that I had to ascend from.
and then how did you get through that? Was there a point where you said, I'm just going to trust this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that moment, or where you?
I remember. Here's what I'll tell you what I remember. I was driving into the city for something, I can't remember, and I was passing a what are they called when they're posts that have been put up on like construction walls and things?
Billboards.
Yeah, but in New York they have billboards on everything. Right. So there was this billboard that as I was driving past it, it said, "You are crazy." That's what I read. I read, "You are crazy." And it threw me into a spin, and I forgot where I was going. So I wound up going back around the block again, and I looked at it again, and I realized it said, "Are you crazy?" It didn't say "you are crazy." It said, "Are you crazy?" So that was the moment that I was very conscious of. I feel like I'm losing my mind, or I'm losing myself, an essence of who and what I am. And that's when it wasn't too much longer that I discovered Neale Donald Walsh's book. And I recognized God's voice on the back of that book. And I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not going crazy.
And you did thank God, right?
Yes, I did.
So that voice you read from Neale Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, was the same voice that you recognized with yourself.
Yeah. And I also recognize it in Mary Baker Eddy's book.
Right.
I recognize it biblically if I read it in the same voice. I don't recognize it when I hear, a Baptist preacher doing it,
But you recognize it in the true essence of that voice. I mean, I think you'd recognize it in the Keys of Enoch.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to break that open. I didn't realize that was.
That's a multi-dimensional book for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So let me know what you think. So, any final words that you would like to share with the audience here?
I'm sure God has something.
Oh yes.
So God says the thing that's most important for your listeners to understand is that Sondra wrote a book for them. She did not write this for herself. She did not do it for us. She wrote it for them because she knew in the messages that were coming through from us, there was an alarm. So in that alarm, there needed to be a message that guided humans into the next phase of their understanding of themselves. So the book, What to Do When You're Dead, is Sondra's gift to mankind from us. And every individual who is drawn to read it is drawn to read it because there's a message in it for them.
And what's that message?
The message is you have a purpose and it's time to wake up.
Thank you, Sondra. And God and whoever else is out there. Your website, how can people find you? You also do private readings.
I do.
How can people find you? What's your best website?
SondraSneed.com, and that's SondraSneed.com.
Sneed. Okay.
And if people sign up for my Weisenheimer letters, which is, I call God the Weisenheimer because Weisenheimer is, by definition, means the annoying know-it-all. So,
that's funny.
So I become the annoying know-it-all whenever God's talking through me as well. So I call it the Weisenheimer letters. And if you sign up for that, you get a free download, which is the 5 principles for quieting your mind and listening to your higher self.
Oh, I see. That sounds great. And so you give private soul readings.
Yeah.
And tell people what a soul reading is.
So a soul reading is when the nature of God that is within you is actually speaking through the nature of God that is within me, because I am designed to do that. But that being that is within you has been with you since the dawning of your essence. So your entire history is accessible through this voice that I open to dialogue in a soul reading.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sondra, for
My
being with me
pleasure.
today.
Thank you for having me, Alan. I so enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, well, feel free to do whatever you want, post it and then send it and then do whatever you want with it and spread the word. And of course, BBS radio is a big part of this, so they help make this possible.
Thank you, BBS.
And Doug and Don. Okay, so we will be in touch soon.
Thank
Okay,
you.
give me a call tomorrow or something. Okay.
All right, I will. Thanks again, Alan.
Thank you, son. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Doug. Good night.
Thanks for sharing all of it. Okay.
Likewise.
Okay, I think